time for the Local Impact, a discussion of local issues and events affecting residents of Northwest New Jersey. Here is your host, WRNJ News Director Joyce Estey.
Good morning. Welcome to Local Impact. I'm Joyce Estey, RNJ's News Director, host of the program. If you've ever joined us before, you know we like to delve into issues that affect each and every one of us in one way or another. We have a really interesting issue to talk about today. And this is the issue of legal cannabis, recreational cannabis, that is. And we have joining us this morning via the phone, our guest is Joshua Bauchner, who chairs the Cannabis Hemp Psychedelics Practice Group. Good morning, Josh. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm fine, thanks. Appreciate you having me on the program.
I appreciate your being here. We have so many things to unpack this morning. So let's start out because we're going to talk about dispensaries. I guess that's we'll eventually get to, and how difficult it is really to get a legal dispensary in your municipality or wherever it is that you're looking to put one up. But let's talk a little bit about the issue in itself. This has been something, we talked about this reefer madness. It goes back decades and decades. And so I can't go all the way back, but give us a little overview, if you will, of the issue and the history of cannabis in the Garden State.
Absolutely. So it's the Garden State and beyond, of course, because the real challenge we have, as you know, is that cannabis, marijuana, remains illegal at the federal level. So we have this really interesting dichotomy wherein it's legal amongst 38 states, but still illegal federally. And that actually does go back decades. You're exactly correct. It goes as far back as 1937, when an individual by the name of Harry Asslinger basically decided that he wanted to make marijuana illegal and imposed upon Congress to pass the Marijuana Tax Act. And there's no dispute that his intentions were racist. I'm quoting him when he said that marijuana makes darkies think they're as good as white men. I mean, he really was an avowed racist. And so his belief was that the African-American population at the time was using marijuana, and by criminalizing it, he would enable them to be arrested and penalized and prosecuted. And here we are today, where that has some real long legs, and where we have a prison population that is unfortunately predominantly African American, arising from arrest for marijuana, although, as you noted, it's now legal. And so, effectively, a bunch of business people wanted to get into the space. It's been legalized, and you still have people suffering and incarcerated arising from that act all the way back to 1937. And then doubling down on that was the Nixon administration. And Nixon wanted to pass the Controlled Substances Act, which is what makes cannabis a Schedule I narcotic. According to the federal government, it has no medicinal value, again, despite 38 states having lawful medical marijuana programs. And Nixon was determined, and we have this, as many people may know, there were Nixon recorded conversations in the Oval Office, so we actually have him on tape. We have Roger Stone very famously acknowledging that Nixon wanted to target war protesters, hippies, and blacks. H.R. Haldeman also said the same thing. H.R. Haldeman actually was recorded as saying, "We knew we couldn't arrest war protesters and blacks. We couldn't make war protests and being black itself illegal." So what they did was they took marijuana, made it a Schedule I narcotic, and then relied upon that to arrest these folks as a pretext. And what's really striking about this is Nixon had Governor Schaefer, who was the former governor of Pennsylvania, engage in a commission to conclude that marijuana was, in fact, highly addictive. And the Schaefer Commission came back and concluded just the opposite. And Nixon overruled that. And so going all the way back to 1970, we have this idea that marijuana is highly addictive, it's a gateway drug, it has no medicinal value, and we should, and have been, incarcerating people on this false and racist basis for nearly 100 years.
But fast forward, our attitudes have changed. I mean, 67% of the vote when it was put to a vote said we would like to see recreational marijuana legalized.
That's exactly right. In New Jersey, 67% of the population has did vote that way for it. And it has been legalized in New Jersey with some success. The CREMA, it's called, is the act that legalized marijuana in the state of New Jersey for adult use, recreational use. And we have seen now a number of dispensaries, there's over 400 at this point, operating in the state, selling to people who are over 21 for adult or recreational use. That's exactly right. There still are some contingent issues arising from the history I mentioned. So, for example, just recently, yesterday, in fact, Pennsylvania a federal court ruled, and this is a national issue as well, that you can't possess a firearm if you're using cannabis, that you don't have that Second Amendment right. And there's federal legislation, as you may know. Hunter Biden famously got in trouble and was prosecuted for carrying a firearm under this same bill, that the federal government doesn't want anyone who's got a prior conviction or who is known to use marijuana, cannabis, from possessing a firearm. And so you still to this day have this conflict between the Second Amendment and cannabis use, even though it's legal. So by extension, alcohol, which is the number one killer in America, right? There's no prohibition against being able to drink and lawfully possess a firearm. But cannabis, again, because it's still the Schedule I narcotic, does maintain that prohibition, which, again, trumps, if you consider it, trumps that constitutional right.
I mean, they're both hallucinogens. What's the logic there? There's no logic there.
Well, there is no logic there, and that's kind of this push-pull between the continuing federal prohibition of it being a Schedule I narcotic akin to heroin while being lawful in so many states. And, I mean, if you really want to take a deep dive, and I know you do that on this program, it gets even crazier because of hemp. Hemp, as you may know, was legalized under the 2018 Farm Bill, and the original intention was it would be legalized for industrial uses. Now, George Washington famously was a hemp farmer.
Wasn't hemp one of our earliest industries in this country?
Exactly right. Exactly right. By one of our founders and our first president, it was used for sails and rope. It does in fact grow like a weed, hence the name for the product most people are familiar with, and it's incredible. And so they wanted to legalize hemp for industrial uses to bring back that industry, as you note, under the 2018 Farm Bill. And what happened was, through this loophole, people were able to basically take hemp, which is designed to not have a psychoactive or intoxicating effect, and create one. And so what we found is that you then had this kind of fabricated distinction between hemp and marijuana. And this is also one of those, kind of law of unintended consequences. Hemp is technically defined as containing less than 0.3% delta-9 THC by dry weight. Now, let's unpackage that. What does that mean? Delta-9 THC is what is the cannabinoid in the cannabis plant that causes that psychoactive effect, that high. And so when Congress passed this and they included that less than 0.3% limitation, the intention was hemp would not result in a high. It wouldn't have a psychoactive effect. But here again, how did they come up with 0.3%? Well, back in 1976, a couple of people got together to conduct a study to determine at what level of delta-9 concentration one could get high. And how did they conduct that study? They smoked a lot of weed. I mean, they put it in their papers, right? They actually put it in their report that they were personally engaging in use of marijuana, and they had the science to be able to make the determination through spectroscopy and that this had 0.3% delta-9. Anything less than that, they weren't getting high. And they put in their paper as well, in their study, that people really shouldn't rely upon this number, right? It was conditioned upon them, their demographic, their body weight, their age, a host of other factors. But that became sacrosanct. And now we have, in federal legislation, this distinction between hemp and marijuana that is not based in real science. It's not based in real fact or truth. It's entirely arbitrary. You could smoke something that's got 0.5% delta-9 and not get high, depending upon, again, your metabolism and other factors. But that became the law of the land. And so now we have this